Okay, for the femur, we're going to use the intramedullary guide first. So we'll drill, we'll pass this rod, this guy comes off, and then we need to select which of these options we're going to do. They say worn or unworn on the sides, so I will say worn or unworn left, worn or unworn right. Whichever one corresponds with what we need goes onto this device here, with this one going on like so, all the way down. And that's going to be slid over top of that rod. We'll pin it in place, remove this, make our cut with a saw. We will then measure the cut with this caliper. We're then going to go on to femoral sizing. We'll flex the leg up. There's going to be this sizer, which goes together like so. We may or may not need these shims. They say worn on them. And we'll figure that out. Pin that in place. The pins stay in. This slides out. And this sizer slides onto the pins. We're then going to use this pin driver, or bolt driver as I'll tend to call it, and these two thicker bolts in here and here. And then we'll take our saw, we'll saw the bottom. Again, we're going to use a caliper to measure those two pieces. If it's good and I like it, then we'll finish the saw cuts, take the bolts out, and move on to the tibia. Moving on to the tibia, we're going to have to assemble the extramedullary tibial guide. So this is the ankle support, which will be wrapping around the patient's ankle. Flat side towards the support. Flat side towards the patient. And then depending on whether we're working on a left or a right tibia, we'll put this in until it clicks. And this stylus just clips into the top. There's a 2 and a 10, and we use the 10 side. That goes up to the patient. Strap goes around. We'll adjust. We'll need the angel wing at this stage. And then we'll take 3 pins to pin this in place. And then we'll take the saw and make our cut. I'll pass this back. We'll take the cut piece of tibia and this caliper that comes around, measure the tibia cut. We'll then go to the spacer block. This is the thicker block, 10 extension. And if that's loose, we'll be adding one of these shims, 11, 12, 13, 14, on top of this to try it out. Once we're happy with the gaps, then we'll be moving on to assembling our tibial trial. If needed, we may need to use a recutting guide where the white guide will go on and the pins will go in place. The white guide comes off and one of these alternate guides will go on top of the pins so that we can adjust our cut slightly. So the next step is going to be to size our tibia, and that's what these templating discs are. So these all have a size according to 4, 6, 1, 3, 5. Essentially small, medium, large. I'll ask for one of these. I'll hold it up to the tibia and see if that shape matches. We'll say it's a size 4. And I'll ask you to open the size 4, and you should have a tray that comes like this. This is a 4, and it has 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 sizes. So you're going to set up the disc for me, which is going to come onto that device. These two pin holders that take these headed pins, I'll take both of them and put them in. The chimney, which goes on, and we'll load the tibial boss reamer, comes down here. And finally, the keel. Keel punch goes in. And that essentially sits in our tibia. Once that's stable, I'll use the pin removal tool to pull these two pins out. And we'll select the thickness that we trialed with. So if we remember pulling this guy, if we didn't have to add a shim, then we'll use the 10. If we had to use a shim, then we'll use the poly that corresponds, the trial that corresponds to that shim. Okay. So that sits in the tibia, and then we'll take our femur trial. So you squeeze that. It should be flush. Twist that forward and hand that to me like so. I'll put the femur trial on. And we'll check the knee and make sure we're happy with it. If we're happy, I'll tell you to go ahead and open those implants, and then we'll move on to the patella. While implants are being opened, I'm going to prepare the patella. So we'll use the clamp with the blue thumb released to the right. This says up on both. We'll put the drill guide on the right side, and we'll put this spiked clamp on the left side. I'm going to clamp that in place, and I'm going to use the patella drill. 1, 2, 3, and that comes off. The smooth clamp goes on, and that gets put aside for later. And we'll figure out what size we want it to be, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Once we're happy with our patella size, we'll ask you to open that as well. I'll take the femoral finishing drill, and I'm going to pass this through these two holes to prepare the femur. At that stage, all the trials are coming out, and we're going to prepare for implantation of the actual components. Okay, once all the trials are out, the bones are cleaned, we have the implants opened, and we're mixing cement. We're going to put the tibial impactor on first. We'll place the tibial component by hand, impact it into place. I'll clear it with a freer and impact it a second time. We'll then go directly into putting the poly on top of the tibia and locking that in place. Typically, I won't use this clamp. I'll place the femur component by hand, and then I'll use the secondary impactor directly. Once the femur and the tibia are in place, I'll use the freer again to clear out cement. We'll extend the leg. I'll take the patella next, and I'll place it by hand with the cement, and I'll use this clamp, and we'll clamp it in place.